Hello everybody, and welcome to the Kids Table Pizza Party. Welcome back if you joined us in the last video. We just had a little issues with volume, so hopefully everybody can hear me a lot better now. Well, I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna go over everything one more time. Okay, so today we are making butternut squash fontina pizza. Is that any better for everybody? Can you guys hear me now? Hopefully my voice is getting a little louder. I can also speak louder if that helps. You just let me know. Can you hear me now? Checking. 1, 2. All right, well, I'm gonna keep on going, but you guys let me know if you can hear me or if you want me to speak even louder, which I can do. Okay, so some of the things we're using today, I don't think I mentioned in this video, my name's Miss Anastasia. And some of the tools we're gonna need for today are going to be our chopper. We are going to need a grater of any size. I have a very tiny one here. I've also got scissors. For our adult helpers, we have a chef knife, which we're gonna use to slice up our butternut squash, but then our little chefs can go ahead and use a chopper to cut them into smaller pieces. I will also be using a rolling pin. We've got a 1 cup measuring cup right here, so my rolling pin tries to roll away from me. A fork, and then I've got 2 sheet pans with parchment paper over there. And then as far as ingredients go, I didn't mention I have a big bowl and a small bowl, those 2. So we've also got all of our ingredients. If you got our pizza kit or purchased pizza dough, you wanna get that out so it starts warming up and starts activating the yeast again for us. So I've got our dough right here. I've got 2 kinds of cheese. I've got our soft Fontina cheese, which is a really buttery, delicious cheese. And then we've got our harder cheese, which is a Parmesan cheese. I've got 2 cloves of garlic, which you can also just use 1 large clove, but my cloves were a little bit smaller, so I went with 2 smaller ones. We have sage here, which is a really soft, delicious herb. I've got a little bit of cornmeal, some salt, oil, which you can use any kind of oil you like. This is sunflower oil, but you can also use oils like canola oil, olive oil, avocado oil, so many oils out there. And then we have our butternut squash and red onion. So those are all the tools and ingredients we're gonna need for today's butternut squash fontina pizza. So to get started, for anybody who has not gotten your hands washed, I did this in the last video, so I'm all set to go, but you guys can head over and get your hands washed. You should also be preheating your oven to 450 degrees. Make sure it's all warmed up because we're gonna put our pizza crust in there, but before that, we're also gonna slice up all of our butternut squash and roast that in there. And then for anybody who has not yet made their pizza dough, I was also gonna demo that pretty quickly. So what you will need is we have 2½ teaspoons of dry active yeast in our bowl. After that, we add in 1 cup of warm water. And we want this to be at room temperature water, so pretty warm, but we definitely don't want it to be hot, because if our water's too hot, it's gonna kill our yeast. And then we're gonna add in 1 teaspoon of sugar. And the yeast actually eats the sugar and starts to wake up from that. So you can see it's starting to bubble inside of here. What you wanna do is once you have your salt, your sugar, your yeast, and your water in your bowl, you are gonna mix it all up and then set it aside for about 15 minutes. Then your yeast will start to wake up and start to bubble inside your bowl, all right? Once you get to that point, I already set mine out for about 15 minutes already. So then I have my 1 teaspoon of salt mixed in with my flour here. And I've got 2½ cups of flour. So we do 1 1/4 cups of whole wheat flour and 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose, but whatever flour you have will work fine too. So you want 2½ cups added in once you've let your yeast wake up and activate for about 15 minutes. So I'm gonna add in all of my salt and flour in there. And then I'm gonna grab a big wooden spoon. And all you need to do is start moving it all around and get it all mixed up inside your bowl. And then once you get all the liquid mixed in with the flour, then you can use your hands to start squeezing it into a full dough. So I've got it all mixed in there. And now at this point, you can also add in your tablespoon of oil. So I'm pretty good at eyeing things, so I'm gonna squirt a little bit of our oil in there, about a tablespoon, whoop. And then keep on mixing. All right. So once that's all mixed up, you can see it's a nice dough now. I'm gonna flip that out onto our table, and we're gonna do something called kneading. Kneading our dough will get that gluten to start working inside of there, and I'll get all of our ingredients all mixed together. Mine's a little bit sticky, but I can take it, and I've also got a little extra flour over here that I can just put right on top. Make sure it doesn't stick to my hands. You're gonna take the palm of your hands right here, push down in the center of your dough, and then lift up the side and fold it over. If you've got your dough that is already pre-made, you can also work with kneading that a little bit. So I'm just gonna push down with the palm of my hand and fold over. And then once you get all of that flour in and you get a nice stretchy dough, what we're gonna do is you put it back in your bowl, cover it. You can either cover it with cling wrap, or you can get a damp paper towel or clean towel and put that on top. And then you're gonna let your dough rise. And you're gonna wanna let that rise for about 45 minutes to an hour. So if you do not have your dough completely done yet, you might wanna pause the video and then come back to it to finish the rest of it. So I'm gonna put all this to the side and let that rise, and then we're gonna start working on other ingredients. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna start to work on is our butternut squash. So I've given everybody a pretty good chunk of butternut squash if you've got our kit at home. Otherwise, you want to completely peel your squash. Squash can have a thicker skin on the outside, so it can be a little challenging to peel. What you wanna make sure to do is always have your hand at the front of the squash and make sure you're peeling away from your hand. That way if you slip, you're not gonna slip and peel your finger. So what we want to do first is, this is what our adult assistants are going to do. We want to thinly slice our butternut squash. So we want it to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. So I'm going to push down and do some slices. And you guys can see, just like that, a pretty thin slice. And also, I forgot, I've got all my seeds inside of here still too. So I'm going to take, it's usually easier with a spoon, but I do not have a spoon. Maybe Miss Eleanor will grab me a spoon. But I'm going to scrape out all of this inside. I'm just loosening up some of the flesh on the inside first. All right. It really likes to stick in there. And just like pumpkin seeds, there aren't a lot in here. But you can always pull out all of these seeds, toss them in oil, and roast them. And have a little butternut squash snack. Those would also be really yummy if you roasted them and put them on top of the pizza. Get a little crunch. Super delicious. So I'm just gonna scrape in there just a little bit and get all that stringy pieces out. There we go. Okay, so now that I've got all of that out, whoop, throwing seeds, I'm gonna continue slicing. So curling in all my fingers, I'm gonna push down and slice it all the way through. All the pieces about 1/4 of an inch. And what we are looking for is, at the end, we need about 2 cups of chopped up squash. So once you cut it up, it's gonna fit quite a bit into 2 whole cups. That's why I've got our 1 cup measuring cup. So I'm gonna slice all of these pieces about 1/4 of an inch, and then we're gonna pass them out to everybody who's sitting with us and hanging out and cooking. And if you have a chopper, I'm gonna show you how to chop it with the chopper next. It's a little tough to slice once we get to the end there. And I've recently chopped my nail off. Got a little sloppy with my cooking the other day and chopped my nail off a little bit, so I'm definitely gonna be extra careful. So, once we are ready, we are gonna take our chopper. Again, one thing I did not do, curling in all my fingers, make sure those nails are nice and safe. and we are gonna cut them into about 1-inch squares. So you can see just like that. So we want all of our pieces about that size, and then we're gonna put them right in our bowl. So I'm gonna start by filling up our 1 cup measuring cup. You want all of your pieces to generally be about the same size because I was talking about it earlier where you're gonna be roasting these. So if we have some pieces that are thicker than others or some pieces that are tinier than others, they won't cook in the same amount of time. So you're gonna try and get them roughly the same size. A good thing to do is to cut one piece and kind of keep it in front of you on your cutting board, and then you can go back and kind of measure your other pieces to them and make sure we're getting around the same size. They don't have to be perfectly the same size, but pretty close. So we don't want a whole bunch of tiny pieces that are gonna burn and then a whole bunch of big pieces that don't get cooked all the way. So I'm just slicing all the way through, just like that. I've got about 1/2 cup here so far. Actually, I might have more than I need here. We will see. So remember, we're trying to get 2 cups. And the first slice we did is about 1/4 inch thick. And then we're going back and doing about 1 inch wide pieces. So butternut squash on a pizza, doesn't that sound interesting? Definitely one of my favorite pizzas. I eat a whole lot of pizza over here. Obviously, you guys have been here for a couple of weeks with me making pizza every week, but besides when I'm here, sadly, I actually make more pizza at home. Really like pizza. Probably should find something else delicious to love, like kale salad. I love kale salad, but don't eat as much as I eat pizza. All right, so just keep on slicing. We don't need to shove the pieces in there. We do want to fit them around the sides, make sure that there's no big holes that aren't filled in, but that's just about 1 cup. Nice and flat there. And then we're going to do one more time. How's everybody else's going out there? The butternut squash is not the easiest thing to chop through. Just keep on chopping. And then we've got that oven going at 450. So when we're all ready, we are gonna pop these in the oven for about 12 to 15 minutes. You want them to get them pretty browned on all sides, but you actually don't even have to flip them because it browns underneath on the pan too. Oop, I didn't measure out my 2nd cup, guys. I'm gonna eye it. I'm gonna eye the 2nd cup because clearly I get distracted talking to you and I did not measure out that 2nd cup there. Or we can even go back and measure it after. Old. We will get there. Alrighty. So, let's go ahead and scrape this out and I'll measure it right into here. Take all my seeds, put them over there. Let's do it one more time. So, whoop. I don't even think I'm close to the 2 cups yet. Make sure it's not busting over the top. Alright, so that looks pretty good with 1 cup. Yep, I barely made it through. So I've got quite a bit more to go. Alright, now we get to our bigger pieces. So this one you're going to actually want to cut into strips first. Go across one way. We get pieces like this, and then we're going to go back across and cut it into the squares. Has anybody ever had butternut squash before? Is this first time? Anybody out there? Anybody? I eat butternut squash in all sorts of ways. Ellen and I like to make breakfast sandwiches with roasted butternut squash on it, a little bit of kale, some cheese, a fried egg. So good. I really like the whole butternut squash as more of the crispy, savory version. I use it the same way as I do with sweet potatoes. I like to make them really crunchy and salty versus the sweet way. But for anybody who knows me, I'm not a big sweet tooth. Not so much. All right, so we've got our 2nd cup right there. So I'm gonna pop that in our bowl. And now we are gonna take 1 tablespoon of whatever oil we are using and put that right on top. Just a guess of of the amount there. And then we're gonna add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So 1/4 teaspoon. And once again, I'm just gonna do a little sprinkle. And I think about 2 of my pinches is about a 1/4 teaspoon. Maybe 3. I'm gonna go with 3. Can even just be a little bit saltier there. So we're gonna take that. We've got our oil in here, our salt, and our butternut squash, and we're gonna toss it all the way around. Make sure it's nicely salted and oiled on all sides. You guys can see that right there. So this is when our first sheet pan comes into play. So the first sheet pan, we are gonna spread our butternut squash across it. So I've got my sheet pan here with my parchment paper, and I'm gonna take all of our squash and place it right on top. And then we wanna move it all the way around. You wanna make sure that none of the squash is laying on top of each other. You want a nice flat surface. So I'm gonna smush, smush, smush. You can definitely use your hands here. You're just gonna get a little bit oily. I think I've gotten dirty enough for today with all my cooking. All right. And you can, if you have room on your sheet pan, you can even spread them out a little bit more and give them a little room around the edges. I have plenty of room here, so I'm gonna scooch them around. A scooch, a scooch. Okay. There we go. So as you guys can see, they are all nice and flat. They have plenty of room around them. And then we are gonna take this, we're gonna put it in our 450-degree oven, and it's gonna be about 12 to 15 minutes, depending on the temperature of oven, if it's correct temperature or not. I put them in before at 15, but you can always set it at 12, see how it looks, flip them over if you really want, and then pop them back in for a few more minutes if needed. There we go. All right, so first step done, guys. Perfect. So now we actually don't need our knife. I'm gonna get this out of our way so we don't have a big knife in the middle of here. And remove some of this stuff. Give us a little bit more room. And we're gonna start working on our dough next. So exciting. So, for anybody who has tuned into other classes, I like to do fun shapes for all of my dough. So, we've got a pretty big piece of dough here. In our kits, the dough makes about 6 small pizzas or 4 large pizzas. And this is 1 pound of pizza dough. So it's a little bit wet, so you might need a little flour to knead into it, or you can just roll it in cornmeal. Mine is pretty wet right now, so I'm gonna toss it in a little bit of flour. And I'm going to make, I actually already took 1 serving of dough out of here, so I'm gonna divide this into 3 pieces. So I'm gonna squeeze it a little bit, make it a nice even tube, just like that. And then I'm gonna use my fingers as my measurement. So I've got 4 fingers on each side. If I put 4 fingers on each side here, you can see that there's a nice 4-finger amount right in the middle. So I'm gonna make a line on each side and then cut it down one side and then down the other. And then that'll leave me with 3 pieces, just like that. So I can put those 2 to the side, and we just need the 1. So today, since we are making butternut squash pizza, Miss Elena over here had a brilliant idea to make my pizza into a butternut squash. So that is what I'm gonna do today. That is what I'm gonna do. So if anybody's seen, I wish I had a butternut squash to show everybody here. But it's kind of looks like a shape of an 8, a little bit. An 8 with a really big bottom. So I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna pat, pat, pat down my dough. And then I'm gonna start rolling. So the most important thing, guys, when you're rolling, we're using the handles right here. You just wanna push gently and go back and forth. Sometimes if you see that it's rolling around or moving around too much, you might have just a bit too much cornmeal down. You just need enough cornmeal so it's not sticking, so you don't need a giant pile. And then I'm gonna keep on rolling. And like I said, this is your pizza, so you can make it however you like. You can make it into different shapes. You can make a square, a circle, a triangle. I've done hearts in here, and last week did I do the star? I did a star last week? No, I did a diamond last week. I did a diamond last week. I did a star before that. But we've seen octopus. We've seen unicorns. There's all different shapes. Or you can just do a regular old circle. So I'm gonna make mine pretty thin because I like a pretty crunchy bottom to my pizza. So I've got it pretty long like that. So I'm gonna flip it this way. And remember, my squash looks like an 8, but with a bigger bottom. So I'm gonna make the bottom real big, make the top a little bit smaller, but then it has that little stem coming up from the top. So I can take that and just pull this piece a little bit and make a stem. It also kind of looks like a funny shaped apple. All right, so I've got my shape going right there, but now we need to work on the crust. So the crust has to go all the way around that pizza and make sure it holds all of our ingredients in the center. So once I get it to the size I am looking for, just like that, we're gonna use the 2 pincher fingers, and we're just gonna grab the edge and pinch them up and push it down. So grab that edge, pinch and push, a pinch and push. Any fun shapes you guys are doing out there? I love to hear about them. Anybody? Miss Pam? All right, so I'm going all the way around. I don't know, guys. Do you think mine is looking like a butternut squash? It's looking interesting. Looking like something. Either way, the lucky thing about it is it's still gonna be a pizza, so it's still gonna be delicious, no matter what the shape is. All right, and I'm going in a little over here. Boop, right around those edges. And we're pinching down, and we're pinching. All right, so I'm gonna go get my second sheet pan now. Now we're on to sheet pan number 2. Disappeared for a minute. I'm having some apron issues. As you can see, I've gotten flour all over myself now. Alrighty, so when you're picking up your dough, it can be a little bit sticky, so you kind of want to just pull up those edges, make sure all of it's not stuck to the table before you lift up the whole thing. And I'm going to pull from the bottom, because remember what I said, the bottom of my squash is supposed to be bigger than my top, so I'm ready to stretch that bottom out a little bit. Okay. And then you guys can see, how did I do? Butternut squash-y, kind of, a little bit, maybe. Kind of looks like a weird shaped apple or a dress. Could be a lot of different things. All right, so now we come in with our fork. What we need to do is we're just gonna poke little holes all over our pizza. This is sealing the bottom of our crust to the top of it, and it's also making sure that our crust doesn't fill with a bunch of air and just be a pocket of hot air. Keep it nice and flat for us. So you can poke it as many times as you like. Quite a few pokes there. So now I'm gonna put this in our oven. We are gonna par bake it. That means we're gonna bake it a little bit to firm up the crust. That way when we put on all the toppings, they don't just all fall off. Because if we go and lift this up now, it's pretty flimsy. It can bend quite a bit. So I'm gonna go pop this in the 450-degree oven, and we're gonna put it in for like 6 to 8 minutes. It'll just start to harden up a little bit and cook the dough, and it might do a little bit of brown coloring on it, but shouldn't do much. I'll be right back. Okay, and I am back. So I set my timer for 6 minutes, so that way we can check on it in 6 minutes and see if we need a couple more minutes or not. Now, like always, I'm gonna clean up my section a little bit. Get all this extra cornmeal out of here. And then we're gonna get back to our toppings. So, the toppings we have to do, I've got a whole red onion. In our recipe, it does say to slice your red onion. We're gonna chop it today just so everybody gets a chance to work with the red onion a little bit. So if you have a whole red onion, you can see it has all this flaky skin on the outside. The root's at the bottom. We leave the root on because that is something to hold it all together with. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna chop off the top. Now I've created a flat surface here for myself. I'm gonna put it down on that flat surface. Put my knife on top right in the center of the root, not the roof, the root, and then bring my other hand over the top. And then you just kind of need to slice into there, and get all the way through. So now I've got 2 halves. We only need about a 1/4 cup of onion, so I think 1/2 is gonna be enough. So I'm gonna take the first layer and take that off and get rid of all of that flaky skin on the top. Just like that. And then we're gonna take some slices. So curling in all of our fingers, we are gonna cut it into our little rainbows. So I'm gonna thinly slice it just like that. Go all the way through. Then, once you get to this part, you can pass out all your pieces to all of your different people who are cooking with you today. A little bit more, so that way it held together all with the root, and then I can just throw that root piece away. And I'm gonna start with just one of my little rainbows. We got purple rainbows today. We're gonna put that down. I can switch back to my chopper. If I didn't go over this before, we've got a long side and a short side of our chopper. The long side stays away from us. And then we're gonna curl in all of our fingers, and we just wanna push down and chop through. Remember, the red onion is a part of the onion family, so it can irritate your eyes a little bit. So we wanna make sure that we're not touching our eyes during this. We've heard some awesome tricks recently where it's when you're breaking up the skin of the onion, the enzymes in the onion come out and they're attracted to moisture, which the most moisture on our face is our eyes. So we've always said here at the kids' table that you can stick your tongue out and it'll go to your tongue instead. But we had a fun person who was cooking with us the other day who said that he's done it where he puts a drop of water on his nose instead. So I thought that was a super fun trick that I haven't heard of before. So we're just gonna keep on cutting through those onions. We want pretty small pieces. And actually, right there, I already have more than a 1/4 cup. But I really love red onions, so I'm gonna keep on going. I'll chop that all up. So like I said, this is your own pizza. So if you like an ingredient more than other ingredients, you can definitely put more, you can put less. It's completely up to you. Got all that. And you can see I keep pushing it all to one side and starting with a clean area. Just makes it a lot easier to chop. You make sure you're not losing your fingers in there with a big pile. And then if you have any trouble getting through the onion, when you get down to the cutting board, you can kind of saw back and forth like you're chopping down a tree. And that'll help break through some of that tougher pieces of skin. As Elena's trying to tell me something behind the camera, I have no idea what she's telling me.
Do you need a 1/4 cup to measure it?
I would love a 1/4 cup. I thought she was talking about something about cooking. Do I want to put it in a pan and then flip it? These were the guesses I had. I was way off. Way off. I clearly would not be very good at charades. Not so much, guys. All right, perfect. So yes, here's our 1/4 cup. So it is pretty small in comparison to my giant pile over here, right? So I'm gonna fill that up. And this, we're gonna pack it pretty tight to see how much we can actually fit in here and keep it calling at a 1/4 cup. So I think that's about it. So I have more than double that amount here. We got a whole bunch of red onion here. So I'm all done with that there. I'm gonna pull everything aside on my plate, and I'm gonna slide it right down onto my plate. And next we are gonna work on our garlic. Okay, so I have my 2 pieces of garlic here. You can see where it was attached to the root at the bottom. It's kind of got a flat, hard piece on the bottom that's a little bit darker in color. That we're gonna cut off and get rid of. So I'm gonna just take that, curling in all my fingers, and chop off the end and just discard it. We don't need that piece. Same with the other one. So now, I just had the oven beat for 6 minutes, and it looks, nope. 12 minutes. Oh, I was putting in the pizza crust for 6 minutes. Miss Ellen and I are doing different timers. Because I had a timer on there for 6 minutes. So did I cancel out your 12-minute timer? Wait, now we're all confused with the timer. But if that 6-minute timer went off, that was for my pizza dough. So we're gonna check that and see if it needs another 2 minutes. Miss Elena put the butternut squash in for 12 minutes, and she still thinks it needs a few more minutes. We're gonna set another 3-minute timer for that. So both of those things should be just about ready. So I'm gonna take going back to the garlic here, guys. I'm taking my garlic clove, and I'm slicing it into some thinner pieces. Like so. Look at it, it's attached to that one. So once you get into some thinner pieces, this is when you can divide it up between your group. Give everybody a little piece. And then we're gonna take your claw hand and start to chop them into even smaller pieces. And then if anybody knows, does anybody know that special word when you chop something super duper tiny? We call it bunny hopping over here, but it has a special French term for it. It's called mincing. Can you guys say mincing with me? Mincing. So we are gonna mince up our garlic next. So I've got some smaller pieces. Whoop. Well, we're not ready to mince yet, because I still need to slice my second clove. So I'm gonna slice that, just like that. And then I'm gonna take those slices and I'm gonna chop those a little bit smaller. And now, almost, keep trying to rush it. Almost, here we go. And now that we have our slightly smaller pieces, threw some garlic at you guys. I'm gonna push it all to the center of my cutting board. I'm gonna hold my chopper with 2 hands on top, hold it really close to the cutting board, so this is where the bunny hopping comes into play. Because bunnies don't hop like this. That's not how bunnies hop. They hop really tiny hops. So we're gonna hop right over the top, and we are gonna mince up our garlic. Hoppity hop. And as it starts to jump away from you, we're gonna push it back into a pile in the center, and keep chopping. Doop, doop, doop. Doop, 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 doop. Okay. So you want to get them pretty small, and try it. If anything pops off your cutting board, you can go ahead and just pick that up. Put it back on there, because the garlic is going to be for our sauce. So we definitely need all this garlic for our sauce. We don't want to lose any of that precious garlic. So that's going to be a very important component to our pizza. Hop, hop, hop. Hoppity hop, hop. All right. That looks pretty good. Oop, there's our timer. I don't know what it's for. It might be for the squash. It might be for the pizza. Might be for both. Just raising her hand. I don't know what that means either. So we've got some pretty minced up garlic here. I think they're all ready to go though, but I think our squash should be browned. I think our pizza dough should be nicely par baked. So we are almost there, and it's good to get your pizza dough out and squash out a little bit earlier, just to make sure that you're not dealing with a super hot pizza crust. What I like to do too, if you have extra sheet pans at home, you can always slide the parchment onto a cold sheet pan. It'll cool down your pizza quicker. And then you can also have the sheet pan to carry around with you, so when you tap the pizza, it's already on your sheet pan. So I'm gonna scrape down all of our garlic right here. And then we're gonna move on to our cheese. So we're gonna do the harder cheese first. It's the softer cheese, but it's harder to grate because it is softer. So I'm not making a full 6 pizzas here, so I don't need this whole block. So I'm gonna take a smaller piece, and you can see my grater. It's a pretty thin grater, it's pretty small, so I want the piece of cheese to be around the same size as the bed of the grater. That's about the same size. It's a bit of a large piece of cheese, but I think I can do it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our grater, hold it on a diagonal. You're bracing your grater against the cutting board so it doesn't move around, and it can also give you something to push against because you really wanna push into the grater with the cheese, especially with these soft cheese, to go all the way through. And whoop, I did not take, so I don't know if you guys saw, I peeled off the waxy red outside of this, but there still is a little bit of wax layering on here too on the inside. So I'm gonna peel that off as well. Just a thin layer right on the outside. It's the casing that they use to make the cheese. So I'm gonna peel that. And then we can keep going. It's getting a little trickier, a little tricky in this spot. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna go back to grating. Up and down, side to side won't do anything. But once we get to our Parmesan cheese, you guys will see, you'll be like, whoa, this is so much easier because it's a much harder cheese and it's a lot easier to grate. How's everybody doing out there? Are we all at the same space? Have you guys chopped all your ingredients and grating your cheese with me? Hopefully. You let me know if you need me to slow down at all. Keep on going. And as you're grating, make sure you're pulling those fingers back so you're not grating your fingers in there, just the cheese. I have grated a lot of cheese today, guys. I did a class before this where we grated 2 kinds of cheese too. So I'm gonna have some super cheese mussels after this. Some extreme cheese mussels. There goes that timer again. Hopefully it's all ready to go at this point. Okay. So, almost. And then when you get to a nice small piece that's too close to your fingers, you can always eat the last piece. Grating. I've got a pretty big piece here, so I think I'm gonna grate a little bit more. Okay. Almost, guys. Humming while we grate. Humming while we grate. All right. Whew. I think that is enough. So, I got a pretty big piece. I'm probably not going to eat all this cheese right now. I'll give a little piece to Miss Elena, too. There she goes. I'm going to pop it right in my mouth. It's right there. There it is for you. Love Fontina cheese. So good. Okay. With my mouth full. I'm going to put all my side to side will not do anything, so don't even try it. Just going down the slide. For me. Okay, so, and we also need much less Parmesan than we do for the Fontina, so that is another reason why that cheese took us a lot longer to bake, to grate. And we do not want to, we always want to use some softer cheese too on your pizza, because the harder cheeses don't melt and stretch as well. So you definitely can always just use Parmesan if you want, but it's not going to be that stretchy pizza-like experience that most people are used to having. So I always used to use either a mozzarella, or you can use even cheddar, Monterey Jack. Chihuahua cheese is my favorite. Super yummy and salty. Okay, so we have all of our Parmesan cheese there now. We are almost ready, guys. I'm so excited. So now, our last step before we get to build our pizza, we're gonna use our scissors. So, I have our herb here and it's called sage. What we're gonna do is you wanna tear off your sage leaves, just right at the stem. And then we're gonna find the largest leaf and put it right at the bottom of our pile. I don't know, most of my leaves are about the same size. I don't know which one's my largest. Ooh, fun fact, these are also called lamb's ear. Can you guys guess why? Because it's really soft and kind of looks like a lamb's ear. Meh. So, anywho, I'm gonna take my leaves, I'm gonna take the largest leaf, put it right on the bottom, and then I'm gonna stack the other leaves on top. Just like that. You guys can always, once you touch your herbs, there's so many oils in them. If you touch or smell your fingers afterwards, it smells just like the herb and it smells super yummy. I think sage would be a really good perfume smell. I love the smell of sage. So we're gonna take our tube and we're gonna roll it up just like this. And then we wanna make really small pieces. So we're gonna open up our scissors, make sure there's a tiny piece on the other side, and then chop through. Just like that. And that way we're chopping all the leaves at once. Loop. Nice little pieces of sage. So if we got a really giant piece, it might be a bit strong. So we're gonna make sure those are nice tiny pieces. Okay. Almost. Be very careful of your fingers when you get to the end. Alrighty. So I'm gonna take my sage leaves and I'm gonna just open them up, wiggle them apart just to make sure that we're not gonna get one giant chunk of sage. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Okay. Alright, perfect. So let's clean some of this area up so we can make our pizzas next. So we've got our sage. On our plate over here, we have our Fontina cheese, our Parmesan cheese, our garlic, and our onion. And then the final ingredient we're gonna need is our oil. So I'm gonna go get our par-baked pizza crust. All right, guys, whoop, almost stepped on the bowl. So we have our pizza crust there. So I've got my butternut squash shaped pizza. Alrighty. So you guys can see I've got my roasted butternut squash here that looks so delicious. So I'm gonna take my parchment up with my butternut squash, and that way I can use this sheet pan to put my pizza right on top of, because this is a nice cool sheet pan like I was talking about. So the first thing we need to do is we are gonna take 2 tablespoons-ish of oil. We just wanna make a shiny, nice bottom. You don't want puddles of oil on here. So I'm gonna take about a tablespoon there, tablespoon there. We're gonna use the back of my spoon and move it all the way around. Remember, we're not looking for a puddle. We just want the whole thing to be nice and shiny. You can also use a pastry brush if you guys have a pastry brush at home. Or if you want to get crazy, you can use your fingers if it's gonna be your pizza and you're not giving it to somebody else. I don't know if everybody else wants your fingers all over it. But then we're gonna take our garlic, and I'm gonna sprinkle my garlic all around. So our sauce today is just going to be our garlic and our oil. Okay, so now that we have our garlic, if you need to use your spoon, you can move it around with the back of your spoon as well. You just wanna make sure that every piece has some garlic in it. Okay, beautiful. Now I'm gonna take my onion. And like I said earlier, I really love onion. So I'm gonna add a pretty good amount of onion, but you guys can decide what you think on your pizza. just like that. Boop, boop. So this would be considered a little heavy on the onion. Okay, then I'm gonna get my butternut squash, and we want a nice thin layer of butternut squash all over it. Beautiful. Our final ingredient before we add our cheese is going to be our sage. Going for a heavy amount of butternut squash, and this pizza is going to be so good, guys. I can't wait. Okay, so now I've got our sage. Sprinkle, sprinkle. Remember, we don't want to go too crazy heavy with the sage, so it is a strong herb. And then I'm going to take a big heaping handful of my Fontina cheese. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to do some Fontina, then Parm, and then a little Fontina right on top. So I'm going to do a little layering there. So we've got the Parmesan coming in next. And then a little bit more Fontina. Here we go. All right, guys. So that is all we need to make our beautiful butternut squash Fontina pizza. We are gonna pop this back in our 450-degree oven, and it's gonna cook for another 7 to 10 minutes, 6 to 8. Depends on how crispy you want it. We definitely wanna make sure that all the cheese is completely melted. I like for it to brown a little bit on top with the cheese. So I'm gonna go pop that in, and I will be right back. Alrighty, everybody, and with a little bit of kitchen magic, I have my pizza here. So excited to try it. So I hope everybody enjoyed the class. I hope you guys enjoy your delicious pizza tonight. We will be doing another class tomorrow, making black bean breakfast burritos with Miss Elena at 11. And then if you want to join for our pizza party next week, we are selling kits. We do sales for kits until the Thursday before. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have fun. Have a great night.